down to 62. And I do want to read the preface, which is, under the current tax system, the annual writing of new tax code places Congress in the role of picking economic winners and losers. It plays one group against the other. This group gets a tax break, that group does not. For whatever label you want to put on that group, they've done that in the past. Do you commit to oppose and vote against any tax legislation that treats one or more group of taxpayers differently than another group of taxpayers?
I mean, I can't tell you today the answer is yes, and I'll give you a prime example. I mean, a tax credit for first-time home buyers. I mean, there are tens of thousands of tax credits that I think are useful given our current tax system, okay? Now, look, I think there are too many loopholes. I think the tax code is grossly complicated. It needs to be simplified. But a couple reasons I answered no to this question is that I felt that it was sort of a setup for, and I don't mean that in a negative sense, but it kind of set you up for the next series of questions on a national sales tax. Okay? And so I don't see how I could answer a yes to 62, but then answer no to a national sales tax, which I'm not sold on yet. So if I'm not sold on a national sales tax, then you're left in part with the current system, which does create differences between and among people, including right now different marginal tax rates for people. So, you know, not being prepared to tell you today, you know, what I think the better alternative is, I couldn't in good faith answer yes to 62.
That means you may not like the follow-up question,
That's
which
okay.
is, what tax system do you think we should put in place so that there is as little politics involved in taxing as possible?
I like a flat tax much more than I do our current system, and more than I do a national consumption tax.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I'm going to go to question number 14. Do you commit to support legislation requiring that the federal government to transfer ownership of all federal lands back to the individual states that they were located within, with the exceptions of the District of Columbia and existing military bases?
If I understand the question correctly, the reason I answered no is because the first thing that comes to mind is our national park system. I like our national parks. And so I'm not prepared to say that we ought to eliminate our national park system. And frankly, functionally, and as a practical matter, if we did eliminate our national park system and put that responsibility down to the states, you'd be shifting down a potentially substantial financial burden onto the states. So, you know, that's why I voted. That's why I said no, because the first thing that came to mind were our national parks, and I think they're a treasure.
Question here.
Ask Tim. He knows how to set them up.
Okay.
Was he helping you?
No, this isn't the question. It's what I need
you
to
go right
put
ahead.
into the question, and actually it was presented entirely different, and I think I'm going to do it that way.
Go ahead.
If Sarah Palin is at one end of the spectrum, and Jim Hines is at the other, you know, we have a really conservative woman who's a representative of the Republicans, and then we have a rhino. Where do you fit?
Well, of course, Hines is more than a rhino because he's a dino, right?
Right, he's a dino. Okay.
But take Rob Simmons, for example,
Simmons,
who was the second most liberal member of Congress when he served. I'm much closer to Sarah Palin. Much closer to Sarah Palin. And I will remind you, when I ran for the United States Senate, the Hartford Courant called me the conservative alternative in the race for the United States Senate. I've been endorsed by the House Conservatives Fund one of the leading conservative organizations nationally, and the only conservative in New England to be endorsed.
All right, then. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, and I'd love your support.